Well, hey there. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to Forward Focus. It's yeah, I can't believe it's May already. Time is just flying by. So here we go. All right. So hope everybody's doing well today. I'm pretty excited about today's content, and I think that we're bringing something in that's really good for your MSP business, and we're talking about some fun things. But before we get started, let's talk a little bit about who I am. There's a lot of new faces in the room. Appreciate you being here today. I'm Bill Black. I'm the CEO of FocusPlanit, and FocusPlanit was created back in 2013 as a result of me selling my MSP, and then realizing that there weren't just a lot of people that were out there to work with ConnectWise. That was the basic thing. So we're ConnectWise mechanics, and we do done for you admin with ConnectWise, and we also help quite a bit with business processes. So yeah, that's who we are. One of the big things that we like to do is come to your office and explain what ConnectWise is and how it works, how it's engineered, how it's designed to operate through your work process, right? So we do these whiteboard workshops. We'll come to your office and we will explain to your entire team, if you want, how ConnectWise works and the impact of their role on the system. So yeah, if you want to get a ConnectWise whiteboard workshop on the calendar, now's the time to reach out, because we're booking out pretty quickly with those. So that's a little bit about FocusPlanit. One of the exciting things that we also do is we go to Chartech. As many of you know, we work hand in hand with Chartech and other partners in the industry. And Chartech has quarterly academies. They have them in Bakersfield, California, which isn't easy to get to, but it's well worth the couple days that you invest in the academy. It's a small environment, very unique, where you can not only attend the academy, but you can also interact with their multi-million-dollar MSP to see how they operate, and everybody can share the same things. So Chartech Academy is coming up June 24th and 25th. I hope to see you there. If you have any questions about Chartech Academy, I can tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just reach out to me, and we could talk about that. Incidentally, next month, stay tuned. Going to have Josh and Nick from Chartech here for a lively conversation about everything sales, everything Chartech, and it's always fun with those two guys. So Chartech Academy coming up. So as a recap, we're working with the AC/DC framework this year. And in the first part of the year, we talked about a track where we're doing some marketing, we're doing some lead generation, we're starting to bring in prospects. And last month, we talked about using ConnectWise PSA within the four walls of the PSA, using that to help manage those incoming leads and to help manage the sales process altogether. So this month, we're going to talk about SDRs, and we'll get into the details of SDRs. The SDR sits at basically it's in between attract and convert. So an SDR is going to give you that bridge. They don't really belong to marketing, and they don't really belong to sales. They don't, but they're right in the middle. They sit right in the middle of that, and they help transition from marketing to sales. Again, it's marketing's job to, create interest and start conversations, whereas it's sales' job to close the leads, to close those deals. If you think about the continuity of things, I'm always talking about continuity. If you think about the continuity of your branding, of your social media, of your marketing, your email marketing, everything, and then you switch to sales and you think about the continuity of sales, there's a little gap there where a marketing lead could come in and then sales picks it up, and things get kind of off the rails a little bit awkward sometimes in that transition. So what SDRs do is they'll come in here when the SDR is working well and you got your processes set up. The leads don't really fall through the cracks so much. The handoffs are more smooth, and prospects really don't feel like they're getting passed around or, getting the shifty thing. So this is more about today. What we're talking about is more about designing that middle layer and defining what success really looks like in the SDR support, and how they can help drive real revenue rather than just lead activity. So in order to talk about SDRs, I'm excited about today's guest because Ray Green, he lives and breathes this stuff every day, the exact topic that we're talking about. And so Ray is the CEO of MSP Partners, and he's also a managing partner at Repeatable Revenue. Ray works directly with MSPs. He helps build sales systems that work in the real world. And so with that, Ray, it's really glad to have you here. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Looking forward to diving into this. And the theme that you have of continuity is really, it's so consistent with the way that we see sales systems, because we look at sales systems truly in the systematic way, right? Like, so you have inputs, you have outputs, and you've got these processes in between. And when you look at it that way, you can look at the different variables and you can start tweaking them, right? Like, and you can get the output that you really want, but you need throughput through the whole system, and continuity is so important. And the SDR function is actually one where a lot of times that continuity falls apart, because you've got marketing that you've designed and you've engineered, you've got the website, you've got the copy, you've got your offer, all that stuff. And then your salesperson, you've got those processes and they're ready to pick up the ball and run with it. But the SDR is the connecting piece. It's and some people put it in marketing, some people put it in sales. Like, I think it's all revenue, like, at the end of the day. And if the SDR function doesn't contribute to that continuity, the whole thing can break down. So what I'm going to do is talk through, like you said, the SDR strategies, how to build a function that actually works. I've got some slides that I'm going to go through. I've got a presentation that we'll walk through. And what I'll do is I'll do my best to kind of get through this in an efficient way. I would love to take some questions at the end, and kind of freestyle some stuff. So with that said, let me just jump into this and start running through. You see the slides, Bill? Everything?
Yeah, we see the slides. We also see your speaker notes.
Okay.
So,
wrong
yeah,
one.
I didn't know if you wanted to. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I'm on the wrong slide. So you guys, this is why.
There you go. That's perfect. Yeah.
You guys probably rather hear me say the speaker notes than read them. So I have some notes. I'm better at sales than I am tech, I promise, guys.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
So let's jump in. So I'll start with by the way, I've got an ebook at the end of this. So if this function or this process is something that you want more information on, I've got a pretty detailed ebook that takes everything that's in here and just goes more in depth in it. And I'll give that to you at the end along with a bunch of other stuff if you're interested in it.
That's great.
So I'll start just real quick background on me. So like you said, Bill, I've been in sales for 25 years. It's what I live, it's what I breathe, it's what I do. The vast majority of that time has been in sales management. So 20 years of the 25 has been in sales management, ranging from sales manager to VP of sales to CEO of a PE backed company. And I was managing director for over a decade of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the small and mid-sized business function, so the national chamber. So I ran, fundraising, ran political fundraising, membership, all that stuff, field sales teams, phone sales, direct mail, digital sales. Did that for a while. Ran a couple of turnarounds for some private equity groups in Dallas, and had fun doing that, but worked my ass off. And so at the end of one of those contracts, chose to take my family and move to Cabo. So my wife and our two sons, we moved to Cabo, which is where I am now. And the plan at the time was to slow down and just do some consulting and, I don't know, have a margarita around noon. And one of my first clients, my consulting clients, was Robin Robbins. And for anybody that's familiar with Robin, it's kind of a running joke with us now because I still work with her closely. It's been 7 years, but it's like a running joke. I came here to slow down, and I'm now working harder than I was before I started. So she has that effect on people. But in any case, that was my introduction into MSPs 7 years ago. So I actually helped her with her team internally. We built up the SDR function. I also ran all the discovery, the closing. So I was the sales manager while essentially part-time. And as I was working with her, she said, "Hey, like what you do is really something that MSPs need. Like and they do, Robin, her business was a lot about marketing. And so, speaking of the continuity piece, they're doing a lot of marketing. They want to turn that into sales. One of the core functions is the SDR, right? Like that's how you're going to maximize the ROI on all your marketing. And so by working with her and seeing what I did, she had me start coaching the clients. So for over 5 years, I've done coaching on both the discovery and the proposal side, and then a lot of stuff on the SDR side. In fact, my business, MSP Sales Partners, the original version of this was actually under Robin's business. Like I started it for her, and then we agreed, hey, spin this thing out, because I wanted to expand it and do a lot in sales similar to what she was doing in marketing. So in any case, that's, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of MSPs over the years. We've done sales audits. We've hired 100 SDRs in the past maybe 12 months, but I'll say 24 months to be safe. We currently manage through MSP Sales Partners, we manage 65 SDRs and growing. We also manage a team of 8 to 10 closers. And fundamentally, that's what we do is we do fractional sales management. So on this specifically, what we're going to do is get into the SDR piece. Typically, from what I hear and speaking at events and working with MSPs, is a few different scenarios tend to be the pattern anyway. And one is, hey, I had this SDR function. I understand the importance of it. I tried doing it myself, and it didn't work or it did. And either way, it wasn't very fun, because you start doing it yourself. If you're the business owner or you're running many functions, you either don't have the time to do it effectively, or you do, and then you have appointments start coming in and your calendar slams. You're like, all right, now what? Like, and so keeping that flywheel going while you have the sales calls coming in can get really difficult. So you either try doing it yourself, and then the calendar implodes, or you don't get the results that you want. Try outsourcing it completely. It feels like the easy button. Send it to an agency. And there are times, like frankly, that you can get results. Like it's not, but it's not all the time. And what we typically see from people who've gone this route, when it's not working, you're paying a ton of money for not getting the appointments, or you're not getting the other benefits that come with building this function yourself. Like, so, when you have somebody calling all day long, that's like R&D, right? Like, you have those calls, you can record those calls, you're getting your data cleaned, you're updating your list, your CRM's getting out. Like, there's a lot that happens. And then of course, if your SDR's taking notes and scheduling is the way they should, they're building a pipeline. Like, hey, no, I'm in a contract, call me in 9 months. Well, if you outsource that, you don't necessarily know that that's all happening. So there's benefits that you don't necessarily get. And so you either, like I said, have the agency and don't get results, or you're just ready to own that function in your own business. And then, the third scenario is typically I tried to hire somebody. So I, again, understand the importance of it, went to hire somebody, gave them a phone, gave them a list, and, I didn't get any appointments. It didn't work out, and you kind of conclude, all right, this isn't working, or some combination of this, right? So this is typically what we see. And what I'll do, I'm going to get into the function itself. I will tell you just very candidly, the math on this, I have a slide on this. The math on this, when it works, is exceptional. Like, it's the ROI of getting an SDR in there to squeeze more performance out of your marketing and take things off the calendar for a sales piece and help conversion is huge. But the reality is, the success rate on hiring an SDR, bringing them in and getting that function installed isn't terribly high. If I were to draw a pie chart, I would imagine that the number is more than 50% of the time when we try to install this function, it doesn't go the way that we want. And the reason for that is it's hard, right? It's not as easy as we want it to be. Like, we want it to be as easy as, like, hey, let me hire anybody who can read a script, put their butt in a chair, give them a script, and watch the appointments come in. And unfortunately, it's not the way it works. And the reason it's hard is because, and this is just what I've learned from 20 years of doing this, it's a recipe, right? Like, thinking about systems, when you've got a recipe, if you're missing, you need all the ingredients, right? Like, it's like, if you start missing ingredients, like I say here, like, you can't bake a chocolate cake without eggs. So you take one piece out of it, and it has a tendency to kind of screw up the whole deal. So, what we have found when we sit and look at this is the core ingredients that we tend to see, and that we incorporate, like, in our own management, in our own recruiting, in everything that we do. This is what I'm sharing is our system, basically. And it comes down to 7 things. One is the talent that you put in the seat. 2 is the training that you give them and the support that you give them when they start. 3 is the enablement and the tools that you support them with. 4 is the incentive structure that you've got behind them or as a foundation. 5 is the coaching that they get. 6 is the accountability that they have to do the job, do the right things. And then 7 is just general engagement, just like anybody, let's say anybody on your team. Like, the different levels of engagement, you're going to get different outputs. So if this is what this presentation is basically walking through, and I'm going to walk through each of these things, and I'll share some of the stuff from internally that we use to hire, to train, to measure all that stuff. And I'll start with the talent, first ingredient. And, I think this is everybody's kind of heard right person, right seat. Like, get the right people on the bus and then put them in the right seat. And we generally know that, we generally accept it. But for some reason, a lot of times we discount that philosophy when it comes to this seat in particular. It's like, because it's like entry level, or because we don't totally understand it. And so we don't use the same criteria. We don't look at it the same way. And I believe, after working with a lot of MSPs, that a lot of this, when it comes to the talent in the SDR role and making it work, it's a mindset shift. Like, it's a mindset around what it takes to actually be successful. And so the best way that I can frame this is, I've never hired a level 1 tech. All right. And I'll probably share a story or two about times that I've tried to hire an ops person, I do the same thing on the ops side that I talk about on the sales side. But if you were going to hire a level 1 tech, what you would look for, you probably, it's entry level. There's a lot of stuff that's trainable. You don't have to have 10, 15 years of experience. You don't have to have every certification under the sun, but there are still some fundamentals. There are still some things that you would look at to make sure you're getting the right person in that seat. You wouldn't hire somebody who can't communicate very well. You wouldn't hire somebody who's never touched a computer in their life. Probably. You probably wouldn't hire somebody who didn't like computers. Like, you would still look for the right person, because you're saying, hey, I know it's trainable, and maybe it's entry level relative to the other roles, but we still need to start with the right candidate, right? We still need to start with the right piece of clay that we can mold and we can work with over time. And this is the same thing. It is the exact same thing. It is just on the sales side. And I think one of the challenges that goes into this is we think it's more of like an admin role than a sales role. And so I'll share with you, like, my view on this is that when you're looking to build this function, it's recognizing everybody in this seat like is a salesperson. Like, they are, like, when you hire an SDR, you're not hiring an admin or a nice person to make phone calls. You're hiring a salesperson, maybe a junior salesperson, maybe an entry level. You got to train them, possibly, but it's still a salesperson, and they are not asking for money. But the real shift for me comes when you realize they have an offer, right? Like, they have something that they want to give. Maybe it's a free assessment. Maybe it's a strategy call with their boss. Maybe it's something. But when you have your SDR calling, there's usually some kind of offer that they have, and they're asking for something in exchange for that offer. And it's not money, it's time, right? So they're selling an offer in exchange for time. And that is a harder sell a lot of times than money. Like, I tell people, if you have a better chance of getting my credit card on a cold call than you do my calendar, because I'm a business owner, just like you guys. And so you look at your calendar. Like, you are not taking time to do stuff just for the hell of it. And so I guard my calendar, and everybody else does too. And so that's what the SDR is up against. They're making calls with an offer, selling it in exchange for time. And to do that requires the right person, right? Requires the salesperson mindset. So what does it take to be a good SDR? So when we're hiring, like I said, we do recruiting, hired over 100, likely in the last 12 months. This is what our scorecard looks like. So we've got a spreadsheet, it breaks down, and this is what we're measuring when we go through our sourcing and our filtering and our interviewing to get the right person in the seat. The first thing we're looking at is, communication and presence. Like, this is the job. Like, this, if you can't understand them, if they're not clear, if they ramble, if they, like, all those things, if they can't communicate well, they can't do the core aspect of the job. Whether you're hiring domestically, whether you're hiring abroad, it doesn't matter. Like, clarity and the ability to communicate is absolutely a core requirement. And that comes across in the interview. If they can't convey, right? Like, if they can't do that with you in an interview, then they're probably not going to be able to do it in 4 minutes on a cold call. So that's the first thing we look at. The second thing we look at is preparation. And really simple premise here is, if they're interviewing for a job, in my view, they're selling the most important thing that they're ever going to sell. They're themselves, right? Like, this is the most important sale that they can make. If they have not prepared at all to show up for this call, if they haven't looked at your website or done some bare minimum research, then, like, you can assume that that's the level of preparation they're going to bring to the job on a day-to-day basis. So I'm looking for, have they prepared, and did they treat this kind of like a sale? And then I'm looking for, past results or evidence of hustle. Now, to clarify, it doesn't, no, we're on this slide, but it doesn't say experience. Sure, experience helps. Like, it's like, if somebody has 10 years of making calls, especially in the industry, cool, that's great. But what I really want to know is, were you any good? because the last thing you want is somebody who's going to pump out a lot of activity and not get you any results. Like we're working backwards from the end, right? Like we want sales, so we want quality appointments, and we don't want somebody who's just going to pump in a lot of volume on the input side. So can they actually demonstrate that they were good, that there were some results in what they did in their prior experience? And that if they don't have direct results from experience and doing what they're doing, I still want results of something, right? Are they like, show me achievements, show me wins, show me like some evidence that you are going to get out there and grind and get the outcomes we want. Then we're looking at objection handling, and this isn't necessarily like, hey, can they read this script, right? Do they know if I give them rebuttals, can they deliver it? To me, a lot of objection handling that we're looking for is, do they have the ability to overcome rejection? Because the reality is this job is like 97% of this job is failure in one way or another. You're not getting contact with the decision maker. When you do get contact with the decision maker, you're like, more often than not, they're not giving you the sale. So the question is, do they have the resilience? Do they have the grit and the ability to overcome objections, get on the next call and keep rolling with a high degree of energy? And you can look at that like based on what they've done, right? And in the past, like different jobs have different levels of resilience. So show me that, prove that to me in some way or shape or form. Then we're looking for coachability. And, we're asking questions like, tell us a time you were wrong about this. Tell us a time your manager, corrected this. And I would argue, I think I even have a slide on here. I would argue the coachability part is probably the most important piece of this. Because if you give me somebody who's willing to do the job and they're coachable, success is basically inevitable, right? If they're willing to implement what we say, like, hey, no, they're like, oh, let's do this, let's tweak this, and they're willing to put in the effort, like it's inevitable. Sometimes the timeline's longer, but coachability is absolutely essential. And then remote readiness, as the SDR function is, we look for more ways to make that more efficient, even automate aspects of it. We're looking for people who are remote domestically and then abroad. Like half of our SDRs are actually abroad in our program. And remote readiness is just a different animal. So if you're hiring remote, there's a different level of clarity, of communication, of discipline, some tech stuff, making sure they have dedicated workspace and that they have the ability to do the job when you're not looking, because remote is just a completely different animal. And also bake into this if they are abroad working the hours that they need to work. So there's like a checklist that goes into making sure they're on board and can do what they need from a remote standpoint. Now, if you have all these things, you've got a rock star, right? So this is what we're looking for when we're screening people. And like I said here, the coachable person with experience is always going to outperform somebody else. It's back to systems. You guys in 1 hour, I may bore you of systems. Like, and it's the feedback loop on a system: inputs, process, output. Change this. Okay, try it again. Change this. Try it again. Success becomes inevitable. So this is ingredient one, and I'll head into ingredient two. I want to share a story about coachability. For the sake of time, I'll make it really quick. But we had somebody just this past week. One of our customers in the SDR program hired their own SDR, brought them into the program, which is totally fine. And we sat down, and my sales manager had a one-on-one with her, and it was very clear from the get-go she didn't really want to be there. She had been doing this for 3 years. She didn't, and you had that attitude, had that energy, had everything. And we called the business owner immediately afterwards and said, hey, we don't think this is going to work out. She may be a rock star, she may be great, you can keep her, but it doesn't work in our deal, because if you're not coachable, I think that's a flag all around. I'm 45, I've been in sales for 25 years. I'm still coachable. I still learn stuff. So that's why not to beat a dead horse, but it's a really important one for us. So ingredient two, training. If you've got the right person, the next thing that we tend to see is that even the right person without a strong foundation when they start isn't going to succeed. right? And because my background is always on the growth side, it's always been sales and marketing. I've usually had somebody who runs the ops side of businesses for me. And so my strength is over on growth, and then I have somebody who kind of fixes everything on the ops side. So as a business owner, starting out and ops falls to me. And so I, hire an ops person recently, and last year actually. And I don't know ops as well as I know sales. So, they start, and on day one, I'm pretty much like, okay, great, glad you're here. You know a lot more about ops than I do. So here's the logins, here's some SOPs that we have. Good luck. Please go do great work. And I didn't have a training program. Like, I didn't have 30, 60, 90. I didn't have a lot of these because I didn't know how, right? Like, that's not my background. How do you think that goes? Well, it didn't go well, right? But a lot of MSPs make the same mistake on the sales side. We get somebody in there, we don't give them everything they need. It's kind of like, here's the phone, here's the list, like, fire away. And you guys probably don't do this on the tech side. You probably have this more systematized. You probably have, because you understand that part of the business in detail, so you can map out, this is the roadmap to success. Sales needs the same thing fundamentally. So this is from our playbook. These are the 5 phases of training that we incorporate. And I go deeper in that ebook that I'll give you at the end. The first thing is the foundation. And foundation is, we're spending a couple days doing, hey, this is the MSP industry. If they don't have experience in the space, like, this is what we do. This is what an MSP is. This is what an MSP isn't. This is the company background. This is our history. This is, what makes us different, our core values, all those types of things. Going through the target market. Who makes a really good client for you guys? Who makes a bad client for you guys? And what are the in-between cases? Really important for an SDR, by the way, especially if you have them doing any degree of qualification. Like, they've got to know this. They've got to be able to make that call in the continuity from marketing to sales. So they've got to understand the target market. And then the other part of the target market is the vernacular, like the language that your industry is using, right? So, the key acronyms. If you're calling in the legal industry, for example, you're gonna tweak your script with wording to make it more relevant for lawyers. So first couple days, foundation. Second part of the first week, like days 3 through 5, we're looking at kind of the initial sales fundamentals. We're looking at tonality. We're going through the scripts. We're doing some objection handling. We're doing cold call mechanics. So what are the core elements from a sales standpoint? Now, to do the SDR job, I mean, frankly, you don't have to know everything about everything. Like, it's a very narrow role from a sales standpoint. So that's why the training on this is a lot different than people who are closing deals. So we spend a few days on the skill development. Then week 2, once they have the foundation and the basic skills and get comfortable with the script and everything, we start working through simulated practice, which is basically role play. And if you have, one thing that we love is like having a Hall of Fame call folder. If you just collect really, really good calls. The more that you get in there, the more that your SDR has to go through. So simulated practice. We're doing role play. We're doing immediate coaching. We're doing, like I said, going through the folder and the, all the Hall of Fame calls. Then, weeks 2 and 3, we're doing live calling. And with the live calling, we start like we taper up. So it's not, you don't just turn them loose, right? For 100 calls a day, like fire away, like get rolling. We start with go call 20, 30 leads. All right, then let's sit down and let's go through some of these calls. Let's coach them. Let's not develop any bad habits. Then another batch, and we just kind of inch our way up into the optimal call level, which we'll talk about too. It's not always 100 calls a day, but just start low, coach. Give them a little bit more coach, and make sure they're building good habits as they're getting started. And then once you've done that, weeks 3 and 4 is really, we say, mastery and reinforcement. It's all right, continue to add some stuff to the Hall of Fame from great calls. We do peer learning because we have different teams set up, the daily disciplines, and so that's where you're starting to turn them loose, and the rope gets a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer as you go. So this is how we look at 30 days. And so as you can see, within a few weeks, they're on the phone, right? And you're seeing some activity metrics. The one thing to reinforce here is not even just role play. Actually, I say role play is not just a one-time event. None of these things, like training, is something that's ongoing. Like just like any other aspect of the job, we're constantly coaching. We're constantly, giving feedback. We're constantly talking about new sales lessons and grabbing, good YouTube videos and, walking through those and, call reviews, all that stuff. So you want to keep this rolling. For every team that I've ever run, they get tired of this quote, but it's like success leads to complacency, complacency leads to failure. Only the paranoid survive. It's an Andy Grove quote, and I always use it because I believe what happens is you get started on a really good training, and you're like, all right, cool, it's done. Okay, and you want to stay on it, right? So that's the second ingredient. Third ingredient, enablement, and enablement is what I basically call the tools, like the tools and the support that the SDR has once they're through training and they're off and running. And because now you've got the right person, you've got them trained up. What are the tools that they need to succeed? And it's worth remembering, like, this has a huge impact on the results, because you can take the same person and you can put them in two completely different tool sets and they get dramatically different results. If you hand somebody a much older school, here's a list, a dirty list, and a manual phone and no CRM and all these things, versus somebody who's calling on a dialer with a highly curated list with a specific target market and within a CRM, and they've got a good playbook, all these things. Same person, completely different results. And it's the tools actually matter, and it's not unusual. Like I've got here, like Batman's not very cool without the Batmobile. It's like the theme of superheroes. You take away certain things, that's the weakness. So if you have the right person, if you've invested time into the right training, you want to make sure that they've got the right tools to succeed. What does that look like? If you want them to succeed, this is kind of the core checklist. First one is, do you have volume of data? Depending on how you're prospecting, depending on what you're prospecting, the volume will differ. There are some where you're making 30 calls a day. There are some where you're making 100 calls a day. But based on the prospecting that you want them to do they have the volume to be successful? And there are a lot of people who we talk to initially, and they're like, hey, I want to get an SDR, I want to get them rolling. And you look at it, and they don't have, the list isn't big enough at all. Like they have 20, 30, couple hundred leads, something like that. So volume of data. Then the quality of data matters, like substantially. And quality of data, I mean, is it cleaned? Is it enriched? There's AI tools that you can use now. We use Cowork to clean up lists quite a bit, but there's plenty of SaaS solutions that can do it. There's you can hire somebody overseas to call and clean your list. There's a million ways to do it, but making sure the data is efficient for them to get through is critical. And then we also find, from managing all these SDRs, one of the things that we've seen is industry-specific calling has a huge impact. Even if your whole company isn't niched to that vertical, calling within one campaign at a time, like, hey, we're calling lawyers for a period of time. It allows your SDR to get the language right and understand certain things. So the quality of the data is the second layer of that. Then a functional SDR, a functional CRM, and some workflows and some task management. And it's, what I mean by functional is, a CRM can be just a list, or it can be like a tool that helps you automate a lot of the process that helps. Biggest difference, like our top SDR of 65 people. One of the biggest differences is the workflows that they have happening in the background while he's calling and before he's calling, because he's making the call, he does a disposition, he plugs in that disposition, and even if it's a no, what it sets out is a sequence of emails that go out over the next 3 to 4 months. Then he calls back, right? And all this is automated on his part. Like he doesn't have to do any of this. Well, his results just get better and better and better. So it has a, like I said, big impact is how you're using the CRM that you have, but at least having one is a huge start. The dialer makes a difference. Doesn't have to be parallel dialer, or AI dialer, or this, that, but the quality of the dialer does matter. And I will tell you, one of the biggest issues that we see right now with the different dialers is there are certain dialers and companies that are like the numbers you're using are spammy numbers to like, we're actually changing CRMs. We did it last year because of this issue. If somebody's making a call, test it. Like call your cell phone and see what's popping up in the dialer. And there was one that we used, and we had to go through 30 to 40 numbers to find one that wasn't spam already to start with. So, making sure that you run some of the checks on this to set them up, and so they're not showing up as spam every time. And then of course, make sure that they have some scripts, some playbooks, some email templates, the structure to get going, so that they're not having to wing it. The last thing you want is, especially a new SDR, winging it on calls. From a system standpoint, you need consistency to be able to test the variables, to be able to determine what needs to change. So get some structure in there and having that ready for them to go. So this is what we look at from an enablement standpoint. Then there's the incentive piece. And personally, I believe incentives, I mean, basically how you're paying them, like what's your comp plan. I believe that this is one of the highest leverage things that you can do, or one of the highest leverage things you can get right. Because if you get it right, it's basically managing for you all of the time. Like the incentives are aligned properly. That means that they're focused on the right reward system that they need. And that behavior is happening whether you're looking over their shoulder or not. So if you get this right, it helps take some of the load off of you as a manager. There was if you know Charlie Munger, he was, the late Charlie Munger, he was Warren Buffett's investing partner. And he had a famous saying and said, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." And this is at the core of a lot of dysfunction within the SDR role. So here's how we look at it, and how we pay SDRs. We look at it, first of all, OTE means on target earnings. And that we start there because that's we have, 30 SDRs are in South Africa, 5 are in California, fewer in Texas. Like, you've got them all over. Those are vastly different OTEs, right? Like what we mean is, if they're doing good work, doesn't have to be like home run work, knock the cover off the ball, but if they're doing good work, hitting the basic reasonable expectations, what can they expect to make total, all in? Like, that's OTE, between salary, between commissions, between anything else. Like, that's the OTE. So you start there. And then what we look, as we say, approximately 70% of OTE, we like to say, is guaranteed or salary. Now, some may do 60%, some may do 80%, but rule of thumb, we say 70-30, 70% guaranteed in salary, 30% is incentive and variable. And then, so that's the first piece. The second piece is, of that 30% that's variable, that's incentive based, we strongly recommend tying it to SAT appointments, or the outcome that they control, like the outcome that you want and that they control. Because one mistake, and I actually used to make this years ago, my thought was, if I pay my SDR on closed deals, it will incentivize my SDR to get me better quality appointments, and it'll ensure that they, blah, blah, blah. Well, the issue was, I had a great SDR and my salesperson was mediocre. And so we were fixing that, but he's setting a lot of appointments and he's not closing deals, which affects his compensation. So really quickly learned, people want to be paid on the things that they can influence, that they can control. So what's the result that you want? Probably SAT appointments, not just set appointments, right? You want people to actually show up, and the SDR can absolutely influence that. And then after that, incentivize the next person who picks up the ball and runs with it on their part of the process. So that's what we look at for like the earned incentives, the second part. And then the variable contests, they can make up a few percent. Like, I like really 70-30 primarily is the base, and then the commissions. But of the variable like contests, the only thing I caution against is like contests can be super fun. They can be engaging. They can get you a specific behavior for a short period of time. Some people will tell you you should always have a contest running. I completely disagree. I think they lose their power, and it just creates more work for you. People get addicted to the contests, and then like once they're addicted to the contest, what's the point of the contest? Like, so just design the comp plan right, and you kind of have a contest going all the time, and then you can juice it once in a while with some contests or something. Then fifth ingredient here is coaching, and again, the coachability is the really important piece. That means you got to coach though, because if you've got somebody who's really coachable and you're not coaching, then you're not leveraging that strength of the person that you hired. And I'll share a story with you that I was thinking about with coaching, because good coaching isn't just finding 27 things that somebody's doing wrong and giving them a list and telling them to fix it, right? That's actually easy. Like, you can listen to a call, you can find a bunch of stuff that you can improve. Even if I made a call right now and you say, hey, go fix this. But the challenge is that becomes really confusing. So the best example of this was years ago when I was trying to impress my now wife. We were dating, and she thought I could use some more quality time with her dad. So he was going to the driving range one day, and I said, yep, I'll go. Now I'm like an okay golfer, like I'm definitely not a pro, but I can golf on a course without embarrassing myself too much. And so I get out there and I'm hitting a few balls, and I was like, oh shit, like this is good. Like, I'm actually hitting the ball straight. I'm semi impressing myself, and I'm like, I really hope he sees this. So I'm hitting these balls, and he turns around and chucks. He's like, hey Ray, when you're hitting, you want to do this with your wrist. It'll help. And I'm like, okay, got it. So I start hitting, and I'm trying to do that. And a minute or two later, he's like, oh, and in your stance, like make sure you're like spread your feet out just a little bit more. Okay. And I hit a few more, and then he's like, oh, hey, when you get here, you want this to happen. And I'm like, okay. I shit you not, true story. Within 10 minutes, I had chunks of grass that were flying further than the golf ball. That was not happening before the coaching. And the reason is, golf, just like anything else, golf is a mental game, right? And so you get out there, and if you're hitting, if you start trying to change 5 things at once, I'm now stepping up to the ball, and I'm like, I'm overly analytical. I'm overthinking about too many body mechanics at one point, and this and that, and I lose the magic. So the same thing happens on a call. If I give an SDR 27 things to go fix, they're going to get on the next call, and they're going to go, okay, the hook, hold on, I got to change the hook, and I got to ask this question. Oh, and let me check my tonality, and before you know it, it's like they sound worse than they did before. So my view of coaching is basically listen to a call, and yeah, you can identify the 5 things or the 10 things that maybe could have been improved. Nothing wrong with identifying it. You can even call it out. But what you really want to make sure is that the salesperson, true of any part of sales, by the way, that the salesperson walks away with one thing. Like, this is the highest leverage thing that you can do to make improvement. Just focus on this, right? Like, if you just do that one thing, and then the next time we coach, we're going to listen to that one thing. And if we've installed it, once it's installed, then I'm going to start stacking improvements. So if I find 10 things that are wrong, I need to say, what's the one thing that if they change would have the biggest impact? Fix that. Don't worry about the rest right now. Fix that one, install it, make it a habit, and then add the next one, and then add the next one. If you do that over time, you're going to have a killer SDR as long as they're coachable. The 6th ingredient is accountability. And going back to the ops story, I'll tell you, like, when I hired my ops person, didn't have a great training program. I didn't know how to create a scorecard for an ops person, because, like, for me, sales is really easy. I know all the things to measure in sales. On the ops side, I really didn't know. It's like one big nebulous thing to me. Like, it's how many tickets handled, how many tasks completed. Like, I don't know. So I didn't have one. And because of that, I had to basically let this ops person work for an extended period of time before I could just know that he wasn't doing well, right? Like there wasn't anything to tell me. There were no leading indicators. There wasn't really anything quantitative along the way. There weren't any markers along the way. I just knew after about 4 months that, shit doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. Right. And I know that much, but I had to basically wait until it was conclusive that it wasn't working out. And that's not fair to him. And it's not fair to me. And really what it came down to was I didn't know what to measure. So on sales, I do. And I think it's basically the same concept with a scorecard. The core things on the SDR function. One is think leads. So that's, number of contacts that they're calling, number of leads that they're calling, number of businesses that they're calling, or it can be if you're having them source their own leads, number of leads that they get into the system. But one is like you're starting with leads. That's your denominator anyway, like number of companies that they call. Then the second core metric is number of attempts and number of calls. Obviously, like that's outreach, like picked up phone, made phone call. Cool. Then the third piece is connections, which I prefer. You can call it connections, you can call it presentations, you can call it decision maker contacts, but the number of times that they reached the person that they were supposed to reach, right? And actually talked to them, heard their voice and heard them. And then the next one is booked, the number of appointments that booked, and then the number of appointments that sat. If you're measuring these 5 things, you basically have everything that you need to figure out everything else. Because within this, the ratio between these numbers is what tells us how to troubleshoot. So if somebody's calling, they're not getting results. Okay, well, let's look. Is it the sit rate? Hey, they've got a lot of bookings. Nobody's sitting. Okay, there's a process issue, continuity. There's a process issue between from booking the appointment to, are you sending them emails? Do you have reminders? Is the SDR calling? Okay, no, they're not getting appointments. Okay, are they getting presentations? Are they getting connections? Because if they're not getting connections, then we can look at what it means. That may be a list issue. That may be getting through the gatekeeper. If they are making the connections, then we may say, hey, maybe it's the script. Maybe it's the execution of the script. But what this does when you're measuring these things, you can troubleshoot really easily because you hone in on, instead of going, I don't know, like is it this, is this, you can say, all right, it's got to be one of these 3 things. And you fix it, and then you just like variable by variable, you fix it, and then you get the output that you want. This is a real quick. More calls doesn't mean more sales. I just like to clarify that piece. And then engagement. When we look at this, is basically like the job kind of sucks. Like if everybody was like, nobody grew up and said, I want to make cold calls for a living. So this is a tough job. And one of the things that you can do, one buddy of mine always says, like the hardest territory to manage is between the ears. And for an SDR, when 97% of your job is repetitive, monotonous, and full of rejection, what we can do as business owners, as managers, as leaders, is make the environment better, right? Like how do we make them more engaged? And we can do that with making them part of the team, sharing the wins. Like, did one of the deals you closed come from one of the appointments they set? Make sure they know that, right? Like make sure the company knows that. Celebrate their wins. Like keep them part of the team. Don't isolate them as like, that's the weird cold calling guy, like not part of the team, right? Do one-on-ones every couple of weeks. Just as a person, like, yeah, you can look at the numbers and everything, but make sure that they're how they doing, like just like you would anybody else on the team. Show them the impact, and then contests, just use them sparingly would be my warning on it. And what this looks like over time when you implement it, what we see typically, 30 to 60 days typically to find the right person. 30 days for the core training. By the end of the second 30 days, the activity metrics should be there, maybe some appointments. That 60 to 90 days, they should start setting appointments. By the end of 90, typically they're at quota attainment, or their trajectory is clearly on the way for it. 90 to 120 full capacity. I would keep them on the same type of campaign, or keep rolling for 3, 4, 5, 6 months before you start throwing a bunch of other stuff at them. But this is kind of the timeline that we tend to see. And then the recap of this, I said at the beginning, I would tell you the math. If you look at this, the reason this is hard, and it's okay for it to be hard, is because the returns on this are insane. They're good. If you have one SDR at 75K a year. They help you get one deal a quarter at 3,500 MRR. If you look at the lifetime value of the customers that they're bringing in, which to me is one of the most important metrics in your business, you put $1 in, you get $11 out. Like it's a huge ROI, and that is why it's hard. Like things that have 10x, 11x returns are not easy, but they are worth it when you go through. Now if you guys want the ebook, like I've got all of this laid out in a playbook, and I have it housed in something called the MSP Sales Toolbox. So if you grab at this link, you can go to the whole toolbox. I have AI playbooks in there. I have scripting. I have objection handling, all sorts of other stuff, along with the ebook that's here. And you can dive a lot deeper into everything that's there. And then to the extent that we can ever help, we do fractional sales management. We do sales recruiting exclusively. If you want help building a sales team or running your sales team, that is exactly what we do. So I don't know that I left time for questions. I've got time, but I'll leave it to you, Bill,
it's okay. If anybody has any really pressing questions, we got a couple of minutes here. If not, here we go. Group discussion. Here we go. If not, I might, Ray, I might ask that maybe, I know I made a lot of questions, and so maybe we have you back someday pretty soon and go through some of these questions and also talk about how we can, how we can kind of tie this into the themes of managing sales and PSA, just kind of keep that conversation going. So
anytime,
yeah.
Man, I'm happy to do it.
So what I might say is, if you're attending today and you have questions or you think about questions, send them to me, and I'll put together another meeting with Ray, and we'll throw it up there on YouTube, and you can get your questions answered that way. If you haven't subscribed yet, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. We're putting all these forward focus recordings up on YouTube, and we're starting to load up some other content. So this is where you're going to be able to find everything that we're doing. So subscribe today and you'll always have access to it. That being said, if, next month we're going to talk some more about the convert part of the framework. So again, we're going to have our friends Josh and Nick from Chartech. They're always a lot of fun. You're not going to, it's worth the time just to spend with them, and very knowledgeable about, about their part of sales. So if you need help putting any content together or any, structure together for in your ConnectWise, that's what we do. Just link up with us and we'll give you a call and see what we can do to help you out. So I think that's a wrap. It's great. I appreciate everybody spending their time with us today. It's kind of a lunchtime. So we'll look forward to seeing you next time around. And Ray, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. And then also Afton, thank you for putting this together. We've had a great time today. So appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You guys take care.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks.